Washington is saying there should be an agreement on peace, not simply a short-term ceasefire. And this is what President Trump has rightly been saying. The problem in Europe is that the Europeans don't speak about any conditions of peace at all, other than completely unrealistic positions that make no sense. Europe is still stuck as if the last 5 years had not happened. Europe is still pushing for NATO enlargement, which is not going to happen. It's pushing for European boots on the ground in Ukraine, which is not going to happen. So the problem in Europe is sanctions, 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 but no sensible talk about a peace agreement. President Trump, on the other hand, has put on the table conditions for peace, including Ukrainian neutrality, which is obviously the way to get to peace in Ukraine. And it's time for Europe to stop, I don't know, the 97th zillionth round of sanctions and get on with what are the conditions for actually having peace. And that starts with neutrality. There are 3 points to what needs to be done. One is neutrality. The second is security guarantees. And the third is the settlement on territories. Let's get down to the specifics. And Europe, Macron and Merz and Starmer and Tusk, all they do is they meet with Zelensky every day, but they don't talk about the terms of the settlements on the questions of neutrality, security, and territory. What's ridiculous about the French and the British position is that they don't go to meet and speak with the Russians about these issues. These are issues of real concern, but all they do is shout at the sideline. Donald Trump has spoken with the Russians and done a good job of saying, let's get down to negotiations. The Europeans have not said that yet. This is the big mistake of Europe. Certainly, Ukraine will have to agree to neutrality because the whole cause of this war was this senseless, ridiculous push of NATO up to Russia's border. This is obvious and clear, and everybody involved in this for the last 15 years privately knows this, but the European leaders won't say it publicly. So this is the first thing. They will have to agree to neutrality. The idea of NATO enlargement never should have been put on the table. It was a cause of war from the start. I agree. And as long as they continue to suggest that it could one day, it holds back peace. Let's get to a real agreement. You know, one European leader said to me privately, oh, it's not going to happen. I said, well, why don't you tell your own people that? He said, that's an interesting thought. The truth is that a lot is said in private that is not said in public. The European leaders need to stop the warmongering, the 17th, the 18th round of sanctions, and talk about how to make peace. What are their concerns? Yes, it's a good question. If we make peace, how do you know the war won't start again? That's something you negotiate at the peace table. You don't just shout on the sidelines that you have doubts. You get down to negotiations. Diplomats have done this for millennia, but the Europeans won't even engage in diplomacy right now. They meet with Zelensky 100 times and Putin, not at all. And by the way, the Europeans don't need the United States to talk to Russia. They need to pick up the phone or use my Zoom account or buy a plane ticket or invite President Putin to meet someplace. It's the Europeans that have rejected direct discussions with Putin for years. The Europeans, they don't need American permission for that. They just need to have diplomacy. They forgot diplomacy many years ago. Yeah, the war broke out under Biden, and Biden missed every chance to end the war. He, in fact, talked the Ukrainians out of agreeing in the Istanbul process to an agreement which was almost negotiated. We need diplomacy now. The Europeans don't have to wait on the United States to engage directly with the Russians. The United States should continue to engage directly with the Russians. But I'll say one thing. The U.S. military aid for Ukraine is basically at an end. And that's the real fact. For Ukraine to survive right now, to stop losing so many lives, to stop having its territorial destruction, we need a peace agreement. We should be hurrying to get that accomplished. And Europe should stop endless sanctions and engage in actual diplomacy.